Howdy everyone, Polcho here with an Age of Magic video. In today's video we're going to do the hero spotlight for Firar, the caster of the Dragonkin. So let's get into it, see what this guy is all about and what he can do. So Firar's stats come in at 1.7 million HP. He's got 198 speed, armor 21k, magic damage resistance 31k, basic damage 125k, critical hit chance 26%, critical hit damage or critical damage is 258k. And going over his stats in more detail, here you go. Feel free to pause that wherever you want if you want to look at anything. So let's get into the arena now. Look at his abilities and how you could potentially use him or not use him. We'll find out now. So in the arena, we have Firar and his basic attack Hammer Blow. Damages 1. The target has a 20% chance per light caster and Dragonkin ally to decrease the target's speed by 33% for 2 turns. So decreased speed is always good. However, you need a very specific squad to get this at 100% chance of landing. Obviously, Dragonkin. Do you want to use Dragonkin and casters? It's a very, very difficult squad to build, but whether it can be done or not, I'm not sure. I haven't looked into it. But we're going to go ahead and look at the animation on Abaddon and see. There you go, pretty straightforward. And we got the reduced speed because we do have 2 other Dragonkin on the team as well. So we got a 60% chance of this landing. Pretty standard. Character looks good, animation looks good. But yeah, you need a very specific squad to get this at a 100% chance of landing. So going over Firar's first special ability, Blessing of Light, increases armor and magic damage resistance for all light casters and Dragonkin allies by 200% for 3 turns. So a pretty solid increase in defenses. If there is an allied Dragonkin tank, Firar will reduce their incoming damage by 80% for 3 turns. So add on top of that the damage reduction. That's a pretty solid ability. If an allied Dragonkin tank taunted enemies to make them attack only him, then the effect is increased by 2 turns. So I think that has the potential to make the longest taunt in the game. I think Rogar's taunt is 2 turns already. So a 4-turn taunt, I believe, I could be wrong, has a 20% chance per light caster and Dragonkin ally to increase the next healing for light allies by 35%. So we'll go ahead and quickly look at the animation of the ability. Okay, that's pretty cool. I like that. I really like that. Issues with this. Okay, first of all, the taunting. The problem with the taunt is that there are so many heroes now that can bypass taunting, that can remove buffs. So essentially, it's a lot it can do, which can be easily negated. Naja, for example, straight past tanking. I can't remember off the top of my head who else, but there are a lot of champions that can bypass taunting. It would have been better, I think, if this ability prevented heroes to bypass taunting. I think that would make tanks a little bit more relevant because we all know that most setups you ignore the tank and you go straight for the healer or a caster and take them out. So yeah, it's fairly easy. This also brings back the point I've made before. I really feel like that this means that there should be a support class in the game. This shouldn't be a caster ability. This should be a support class ability. And casters should be damage dealing specific. The whole ability is an amazing support ability. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot it offers to the team. But as a caster, you're really losing that damage from a damage class. Like Ilios, for example, a caster, he can do pretty good support abilities, but he has the potential to do some damage as well. So this, yeah, it makes me feel like there should be a support class in the game. It would add a lot of variance to the game as well. We could have a lot more builds where we try and incorporate support classes, because if you have classes designed specifically for support, then they're going to specialize in that role. There's going to be great support units instead of having hybrid characters, which is nothing wrong with. It just feels like it takes away a little bit from the character. So again, you need light casters and Dragonkin allies on the team. So again, very specific. So I'm thinking right off the bat, Roynar. You could probably run a Roynar lead. That might be pretty strong, especially having this ability to buff Dragonkin and light heroes, since Roynar is the light dark elf and he is, oh no, he's a melee damager. What am I saying? Scrap everything I just said. You cannot use Roynar. Since his abilities are all AoE, I just assumed he was a caster. He's a melee damager. Yeah, so you're going to have to think of light casters. Without Roynar now, who knows? Let's move on to the next ability. I've talked about this one enough. So looking at Firar's second special ability, Surge of Strength, increases outgoing damage for all light casters and Dragonkin allies by 30% for 2 turns. Pretty good damage increase. If there is an allied Dragonkin tank or healer, this bonus is increased by 25%. So a 55% increase to damage. Pretty solid. Firar is guaranteed to deal a critical hit on his next turn, which brings me back to the point I was just saying. I mean, with a support unit, he's not really dealing damage. I feel like this is a bit of a waste on him. Maybe if he could have given that guaranteed crit to someone else, for example, Rock, because he's a light caster. I figured one out. That might be more beneficial instead of him himself, as I don't think he can do a lot of damage. I think the next ability doesn't really do damage either, but we'll get to that in a second. We'll go ahead and cast the ability, see what it looks like. Okay, I like his ability animations. They're pretty good. They always do a pretty good ability cooldown 4. Don't really think that's important to mention. Yeah, again, this is another support ability. He is essentially a full support unit. We're still yet to look at one more ability, but so far, he's just buffing your team. He's making your team stronger. He's not actually damaging the enemy. So he loses a little bit of strength in that department. And I can't see an ability where this damage would be lethal, or to the point where we have seen some damage output lately has been pretty full on. But we will move on to his last special ability, and then we have his passive. We'll see what the damage is like for his next special, and we'll test it with the guaranteed crit to see what we're looking at. Okay, so looking at the last special ability, Light of Vengeance, can apply the caster mark and trigger the caster mark by the looks of it. So kind of like a Swamp Killer effect here, but it doesn't tell me what the caster mark does. I will look into that, see if I can find anything out. The ability itself is damages all enemies. If there is an allied Dragonkin tank or healer, the ability cannot be dodged. So like I said, all these are support abilities, and then we get to one pretty average looking damage ability. I've gone ahead and casted his guaranteed crit, so we'll go ahead and look at what this animation looks like and what type of damage it can potentially do. Mind you, there aren't any other buffs from any other heroes. There's the chance that you would have buffs from other heroes at this point of the fight, but we'll see what we can do. Okay, so pretty sick animation, big hammer slam on the ground. Mind you, he's a caster, so does it make sense? Who am I to say? But the damage wasn't horrible. I mean, for an AoE ability with guaranteed crits, it looks like it's a bit more on the good side, to be honest. I don't see a lot of AoE abilities doing tremendous amounts of damage. I mean, you have combinations like I guess you could say Rock and Suna, Wukong and Suna, where with the crits, you get the support attack from the Suna. They can often do a lot of damage. But yeah, I'm not disappointed with that damage, to be honest. I think that's fairly decent. Worm Priest, I think, has lower HP than the rest of the champions on that team, so his HP obviously decreased a lot more than the others. The more tankier units, you can't really expect a lot of damage from AoE abilities. Let's go ahead and compare it to Tyros right now, see what his AoE ability does. Mind you, he's an AoE damage dealer, melee damage dealer, so you'd assume he would do a bit more, but let's go ahead and have a look. See, so he does a lot more damage, and he does have a buff on him by the looks of it. Can I go ahead and have a look at what that buff is? Damage increase. Okay, so he does have a damage increase buff on him as well. So that would make sense. Mind you, he is a specialty damage dealer, so it does still make sense that he does do a lot more damage. But from 2 AoE abilities, that's nearly everyone at half HP. In saying that, would you run a Tyros on this team? I don't know, because Firar, I've already forgotten his name, Firar, it's almost forcing you to run casters and Dragonkin, which is a bit hard because at the moment, I mean, you'd want to run a full Dragonkin team at some point because everyone's been waiting for them for so long. It honestly makes it feel like he's making Rogar a little bit more relevant. There's not so much Kirana. She's still kind of the same. She gets a little bit of extra healing from him. That's about it. But it honestly sounds like Fire is trying to bring Rogar into the meta. Whether it can happen, I'm not positive. We'll go ahead and look at the passive, see if that changes anything or if it makes Rogai any more relevant, or maybe even Karana. So looking at Firar's passive, we have Zeal of the Inquisitor. If there is even one Dark ally, then all Firar's attack and defenses fall by 35%. So no Dark allies on your team. Don't do it. I think you're putting yourself at too much of a disadvantage. But who knows? We've seen combinations before where some of this stuff doesn't really matter. Increases damage dealt by light casters and Dragonkin allies to Dark characters by 25%. It's a nice damage boost, but at the moment there aren't a lot of Dark ally teams out in the game being dominant in the field. You've got your Dark Prodigy team. Lael, I think, honestly did make the Dark Elves stronger. Her in replacement of Royna, I think they do far better on defense. I've got a lot of defense wins with Lael on my team, so that's good against the Dark Elves. But apart from that, what other Dark Elves teams do you properly see in your arenas? You could potentially use it against Barbarians since they've got the Swamp Killer and Azariel. It might be enough to nuke them out pretty quickly. But other than that, maybe some dark squads will come up in the future where Firar will get a little bit more use. We've got at the start of the battle, damage against dark enemy characters from the next 2 attacks is increased by 25%. So again, against dark teams, you're looking at doing a fair bit of damage. Now, saying that, you have that last part isn't restricted to Dragonkin or Lightcasters, so I feel like maybe you could find some use for Firar in some composition with your light heroes against Dark Elves. I feel like this is going to be his biggest strength at the moment, is potentially the Dark Elves. Now, in saying that, do you want to run Karana? I don't know. I still feel like you could better use out of a different healer. I feel like Lucky would still be better off. You can't use Azariel, scrap her. I mean, you maybe could. It's going to weaken your Firar though, and I don't think you want to do that. You could run Lucky over Karana. Or potentially you could run Cathbad. Why do I say Cathbad? Because Cathbad boosts, I think he can resurrect Dragonkin, I believe, off the top of my head. And he can heal pretty well. He works well with the Dragonkin. Obviously, Fire is not going to affect Cathbad, but Cathbad can be used on the team with Firar. In saying that as well, in terms of light casters, you could potentially run Ilios lead again. He is a caster. He will get the boosts from Firar, and Cathbad can still resurrect. No, then you're looking at not being able to resurrect the Ilios, so you might still have to run the Karana. But running an Ilios lead may be a good point. You've got Ilios, it might bring him back a little bit. He's a caster who will get damage boost from the Firar, and he'll get just that because he's a caster, and versing dark characters, potentially with the healing he gets from being crit by enemies, that would substitute from the lack of healing from Karana. That's a potential team setup you've got. You've got your Ilios, Firar, Rogar, Karana. I don't know who you would put in your last spot. Potentially another healer, or you'd find another caster, probably Rock. Rock might serve you some use as he is a light caster, so he has a little bit extra damage as well. Just a team off the top of my head, don't know how effective it will be or what you would use it against, but who knows. It's all up for testing in the future. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that is Firar for you. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below. I'll answer to the best of my ability, and wherever you are in the world, until next time, please take care of yourself.